Thanks for looking in. This is The Pulse on a Thursday night. I'm Rup Raj. Tonight we're taking a closer look at the mass shooting at that Georgia high school that claimed the lives of 2 students and 2 teachers and hurt 9 others. And we're learning more about some concerning posts on social media that gunmen could have made last year that actually put him on the radar of the FBI. Why the sheriff's department there is saying they didn't drop the ball. And we're sitting down with a former teachers union president and a gun rights advocate about where the country needs to go moving forward to stop things like this from happening again. That'll be the big focus of the show tonight. Now, here's the deal. The discussion won't be a debate of people yelling at each other while the tears are still flowing some 750 miles away in the town of Winder, Georgia. Instead, we sit down with a passionate Detroit educator to ask him what he thinks needs to happen. And then separately, we sit down with a man who owns a gun store but whose heart aches at tragedies like this. Both will have their chance to tell us why they think their stance needs to happen to move forward and to avoid these tragedies. But right now, we want to take a quick look at some of the stories making headlines this election season. We are a week out from the first debate between Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump. And the 2 sides have agreed to the rules for this showdown. The biggest thing, microphones will be muted. That was a source of drama within the last couple of weeks, and something the Harris camp says will be to her disadvantage because they say the viewers won't hear Trump's outbursts. It'll be a 90-minute debate with 2 commercial breaks, and the moderators will be the only ones asking questions in that room. There will be no audience, and by the way, no written notes at all on that podium. ABC will not share the topics or the questions in advance, but we can imagine what they're going to be about: abortion, the economy, a lot of the hot button issues that they've been campaigning about. And hitting the campaign trail, former President Donald Trump spoke at the Economic Club in New York. The economy is a huge focus for many of us this election year. Trump pledged to create a government efficiency commission, which he says would audit the finances and performance of the entire federal government. But then he also made this pledge.
Stop this onslaught at lower prices. I'm pledging today that in my second term, we will eliminate a minimum of 10 old regulations for every 1 new regulation. We'll be able to do that quite easily, actually. And instead of attacking industries of the future, we will embrace them, including making America the world capital for crypto and Bitcoin.
Now, here's where that conversation gets, well, interesting. During his latest run for president, Trump has launched a new venture to trade cryptocurrencies that he's promoting on the same accounts he's using for his campaign. And his sons, Don Jr. and Eric Trump, are also posting about World Liberty Financial, which is expected to be a borrowing and lending service. But this is nothing new. Trump has mixed his business and political ventures in the past, like promoting his hotels and golf courses while he was serving as president in the White House. And speaking of the former president and money, his campaign released some new fundraising figures today. Like we've done with the Harris campaign, it's time to go by the numbers. The first number you need to know about is right here. It's $130 million. That's the amount of money the campaign says it's raked in the last month. While that's lower than the July figures, his advisors say it still puts him in a really good position for the last 2 months of the election. Here are the next 2, 98% and less than 200. Now, here's the deal with those. The Trump campaign says the vast majority of its donations were ones where people donated less than $200. The last Trump fundraising number we wanted to show you, 56. That's the average donation amount the Trump campaign says it got during the month of August. And perhaps this isn't the biggest number in terms of amount, but it definitely is the biggest in terms of importance. 60. That's how many days we have until Election Day. And early in-person voting is coming sooner than that. So that might look like we have a while, but it's truly a sprint for both candidates. And of course, as you know, this program is here for every single moment. On the other side of the aisle, a key member of the Biden administration is warning voters they could lose jobs if Republicans weaken clean energy laws. We're talking about Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She was talking about incentives for investments in manufacturing and clean energy. She told voters if the law is gutted, it would be, quote, historically a mistake.
Rolling them back would raise costs for working families at a moment when it's imperative that we continue to take action to lower prices. It could jeopardize the significant investments we're seeing in manufacturing here and across the country, along with all the jobs that come with them, many of which don't require a college degree.
Now, Yellen says as production of clean energy goes up, costs will go down. and it'll create jobs as well. On to the courtroom now, and a surprise guilty plea by President Biden's son, Hunter. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor and felony tax evasion charges just hours after jury selection was set to start. Hunter Biden is accused of not paying at least, listen to this, $1.4 million in taxes. He already faces possible prison time from his felony gun conviction. This trial was expected to show more details about Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings. His lawyer says he pleaded guilty to spare his loved ones from a messy trial. Turning our attention now to the mass shooting at that Georgia high school, which killed 2 students and 2 teachers. Tonight, we're learning the teenager accused of pulling the trigger was on the FBI's radar. You see, investigators questioned the suspect last year after they were tipped off that he had possibly threatened to shoot up a middle school, and he apparently did this on social media. Investigators tracked the account to his email address, but the teen told investigators he would never, ever say something like that, even jokingly. No arrests were made because of what they call inconsistent information on that account. President Biden addressing the tragedy today.
We need more thought, more than thoughts and prayers. Some of my Republican friends in Congress just finally have to say enough is enough. We have to do something. Together, let's ban assault weapons. My dad is a hunter. I don't know a whole hell of a lot of deer wearing Kevlar vests. I'm serious about this. High-capacity magazines, once again, what do we need them for in terms of domestic use? There are too many people who are able to access guns that shouldn't be able to.
As for the suspect, he's charged as an adult with murder. 8 students and 1 teacher, as we say, were hurt in that shooting. And this tragedy is something that we have to report on far too often, and it's something that leaves us asking the same question. How many times does this have to happen before something changes? We went out to ask you if you think lawmakers should do more to prevent school shootings. Here's what some of you had to say.
I believe that we can make our schools a little safer. Metal detectors, okay. I believe therapy. I believe preventative measures, counseling, monitoring social media.
Oh, absolutely.
How so?
I guess I'm trying to think as far as it's the gun laws, honestly. I think that definitely needs more attention.
I think the law will not change it. I'm like, maybe my opinion is wrong, but more than they need how should I say, like mindfulness.
Now, we also asked you the question on fox2detroit.com. If you'd like to weigh in, just scan that QR code right there at the bottom of your screen. So far, the vast majority of you say yes, lawmakers need to do more to prevent these types of tragedies. Before we go to break, we leave you with some sobering statistics from the National Gun Violence Archive, which tracks mass shootings in the United States. Just this year alone, there have been 385 mass shootings. 385 lives cut short in these senseless acts of violence. 1,679 people have been hurt. They've been injured because of this. The latest shooting in Winder, Georgia was the 10th mass shooting already this month. And keep in mind, today is only September 5th. Our discussion about the gun violence issue continues right after the break. What has to happen next? 2 unique perspectives when we return. All right, back now on The Pulse, continuing the conversation about gun violence after the tragedy in Georgia. And we do have some late developing news to tell you about. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation announcing the suspect's father has been arrested. The 54-year-old faces 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, as well as second-degree murder and cruelty to children charges. Tonight, we're getting 2 unique perspectives on the issue, starting with Keith Johnson, who's the former Detroit Federation of Teachers president, an educator and a lifelong advocate for our young people, and someone who has seen the results of tragedy hit students off and on throughout your career. Keith, we thank you for joining us. Let's begin with those late developing facts that just came through this evening, basically saying that this father will be charged. We know that in Michigan we have safe storage laws that would allow the same kind of charges to happen here, and we've seen it happen. That means that that law, do you think, is working? And how can we say that if we still have these lives that have been lost?
I think right now we have too small of a sample size to say that it's working. but it's a good sign that we're moving in the right direction. I believe that the charge against the father is appropriate because when you have a minor in the home and you have guns, it is your responsibility to make sure that those guns are put away safely so that a minor, or really anyone unauthorized to have it, can gain access to it.
But when you look at the situation in Winder, Georgia, and you also look at the situation in Oxford, where you had the Crumbly parents on trial, it seems to me, and this is just another guy watching TV for a moment, that these parents may not necessarily be very careful because they just don't care about what their kids are doing. In other words, would these laws actually help? I mean, if you had safe storage laws in place, yet you still have tragedies like this happen, how is that safe storage law helping? It can't help retroactively.
No, it doesn't help retroactively. And I don't know if I would go so far as to say they don't care what their children are doing. I think too many parents become too preoccupied with whatever is going on in their lives. And one of the things that I have maintained for a number of years, when we were coming up, parents were parents. Now it seems like they're focusing more on providing than parenting. When you look at this young man in Winder, Georgia, he's 14 now, but he was 13 a year ago when he first put out some of these threats. And I think that we've become so
desensitized?
Desensitized, thank you. So desensitized to this that we don't really take it as seriously as we need to. But you look at what we've gone through over the past 15 years or so, whether you're talking about the tragedy in Massachusetts, whether you're talking about Parkland in Florida, you talk about the kids down in, Bellatty, Texas, Oxford. I mean, in your opening, you asked, how many more times does this have to happen before we take some serious action?
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. And by the way, when I said that parents who don't care, I don't mean don't care for their children or their children's well-being, but not caring, not being careful with a handgun or any kind of a gun that you have in your home is being careless, and you're not caring about that situation, that your kids could get a hold of it. We do have laws that were passed here in February of last year in the state of Michigan, and we know that those safe storage laws are a part of that package. We also know that there's the convicted domestic abusers are now going to be kind of held to a higher degree of reproach when they say, hey, should you have a gun or not? But do these laws actually help?
I think they help to put away some of the people who have been irresponsible. I think it is yet to be determined whether they're going to help to avoid tragedies like the one that we saw in Georgia yesterday, or the ones that we've been living with for the past 15 or 20 years. As far as the safe storage is gone, look at the number of people in metropolitan Detroit who have had children who have shot themselves, and those parents or guardians are now being held accountable. That's a step in the right direction. But as an educator, I'm really concerned right now with what measures can we take in order to provide a safe and secure environment for our children to learn and teachers to teach.
So does accountability lead to prevention in your mind at some point?
I believe that the two ultimately intersect. It may take a while for us to get there. I mean, you know, when I started teaching in 1978, we didn't hear anything about shootings like this. But in 1978, we didn't have social media. We didn't have cyber bullies and all of these contributors to what a lot of these young kids are experiencing now. And I think one of the most unfortunate aspects of this is how life itself has become devalued among many of our young people.
And that, by the way, even gun rights advocates out there who believe in the ultimate protection of that right and believe that more laws isn't the solution, they have a lot to say about things, including Chad King, who we had a chance to speak with, who is a gun rights advocate as well. Let's listen to what Chad had to say.
But I don't think that the issue is object-oriented legislation. We have thousands of firearms laws at the local, state, and federal levels all across the United States. I'm reluctant to believe that the laws that we have currently in place, well, clearly they didn't stop this tragedy of this school shooting. It's, not necessarily completely predictable, but there are some things that we can do if we want to go the legislative route that have nothing to do with the firearm and actually deal with our society as a whole, our mental health as a whole, and things of that nature.
All right, Keith, is there some kind of legislation that you think that we're not thinking about, we're not talking about, that could be in effect that could help prevent this problem?
I think the first step that we have to take, and I'm a gun rights advocate as well. I'm a gun owner myself. But I do not believe that it is necessary for us to have assault rifles that are as easily attainable as they are. I think that is a step. We don't want our schools to look like prisons. But by the same token, we've tried having resource officers. We've tried, a number of strategies. Maybe now we need to make sure in any school, because these tragedies have become transcendent. It's whether you're city, suburbs, rural, wherever you are, these types of tragedies are happening. So maybe all of our schools, elementary, middle, and high school, maybe all of them need to have metal detectors.
Whether you're black, brown, white,
it doesn't matter.
This is a tragedy that obviously affects all communities.
Death is colorblind.
Absolutely it is, and sadly we have to see that again here tonight. Keith, it's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Let's have you back sometime. Our conversation does continue with Action Impact Firearms Bill Cusick right after the break. What he thinks needs to happen and why he thinks some laws may not be the solution. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse and continuing our conversation about mass shootings in America. If you're just joining us, we have some late developing news to tell you about. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation announced the suspect's father has been arrested in that school shooting. The 54-year-old faces 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, as well as second-degree murder and cruelty to children charges. This latest mass shooting at that high school in Winder, Georgia, claiming the lives of 2 students and 2 teachers, hurting 9 others. Joining us now, Bill Cusick with Action Impact Firearms. And we thank you so much for joining us here today. It's good to see you.
Thank you for the invite.
Bill, every time I call you about a school shooting, the first thing you always tell me on the phone when no one's watching and no one's listening is how your heart aches for the tragedy and what's happened here. And I know you feel the same way about what happened out in Winder.
Well, absolutely. I don't know how we can't but empathize with the parents and the school district and the children, and regardless of where they die.
When you think about what so many people who are angry about this have to say, they would say, if this kid didn't have such easy access to guns, this wouldn't have happened. What do you say?
Well, it's entirely possible they're 100% correct, right? So, the things I understand, there's some late breaking news, I get that too. But apparently in 23, he came on the radar of law enforcement, FBI, then turns it over to the local sheriff. And, those things are difficult to put together. I think people need to understand that. You just can't walk into somebody's house, take them into custody, and when that's all that you have. So,
especially when the kid's 13 years old, right?
Let's hold back on criticizing law enforcement down there. So that makes this worse. So now, at that point in time, maybe the father, in of his own, should have done something with those guns, whether he turns them over to a relative, whether he puts them into safe storage somewhere. I would think that's what any rational parent would do. Well, but that obviously didn't happen.
And it doesn't happen too often, and that's because there are people who don't realize the real consequence that happens here often. And now we have some laws in place in the state of Michigan with those safe storage laws. When violated, parents can get in trouble, kind of like the one in Winder, Georgia. Do those laws work?
Well, I think they work for people who have the capability and the interest in watching the news and being up on this. But if you don't pay attention to that and you're not a parent who really cares about that, then no, they're not going to work, unfortunately, right? I wish they all worked, but apparently they don't. So you need somebody who is of the mind to pay attention to these laws and then to act upon them too, right? So I can see the legislature's changing. Now we're taking parents into custody. That hasn't always happened. I think we're even looking out of Sterling Heights. Maybe they're looking at parents in a car accident. And so maybe that's where the law is headed, and maybe those aren't bad ideas. Right.
Let's listen to what Ben Johnson, who everyone knows as the attorney who represents many of the Oxford families and their victims' families, has to say on this sad day in America. Take a listen.
What we have got to do, in my opinion, is we got to make it clear to parents and people who have them that they are going to be held directly, criminally, and civilly responsible if their kid takes a weapon. Plain and simple. And it's similar to, and if we could just ignore the gun thing for a second, your car. A lot of people don't know, but when I have kids in my house who are driving age and they take my car, even if I don't know they're taking my car, I'm still responsible if they go out and do something stupid and hurt and kill somebody.
All right, Ben Johnson saying something that so many people are echoing right now. Take the gun out of the equation because that is such an emotional issue for so many, and talk about parental responsibility. In this case, a gun, sometimes a car. Do those safe storage laws work in terms of when people do see the results of parents being arrested? Do you think that prevents future shootings from happening like the one we just saw?
Well, I think I'm optimistic that the message perhaps is being delivered, because now it's going to make the news tonight that this father is being arrested. It certainly made the news out of Oxford that those parents were arrested, charged, and convicted. So then you hope, but herein lies the problem. It's already against the law to kill somebody, right? It's already against the law to be underage in possession of a firearm. It's already against the law to let a child have access to a firearm. We have all these laws. And, you know, I said this on your show 10, 12 years ago. Those laws aren't enough. They're not going to work. There's plenty of laws already in existence. The things that we need to do if we want to secure these buildings, and I'm careful with what I say, Roop, you know that. I'm not going to trigger any ideas in anybody's head. If we want to secure the buildings, perhaps we can do a better job of that, but then we're going to start getting into the political minefield, aren't we?
Well, how costly is it to say for every school in America we need to secure the building in a way that doesn't allow anybody to come in? You're talking about arming with metal detectors all of the schools?
Well, with the metal detectors, you're going to need a law enforcement officer. So I talked to a friend of mine who's a police chief today, and he has a 10-officer department, and just for his schools alone, he would need 30 school resources officers. So come on, there's not a local community that can bear that burden. You're going to need the federal government. Where's our money going when we talk about the federal government? Well, now we're over in Ukraine, and we're in Israel, and we're sending a lot of money over there. So,
but if you can spend $1.7 trillion on infrastructure, can you spend something similar to help secure the most important place where our future lies, those schools?
Yeah, we could lock down those schools without question. You could have 2 or 3 perimeters before you even get to the building. And that could be done with that kind of money. Absolutely, that could happen. I
want to ask you about, as a former police officer yourself, when you hear about those sheriff's deputies saying, yes, you know, a year ago the FBI talked to this family. We couldn't do anything about it. What then do you think needs to happen? Where's the hole there? Do you think the school counselors need to get involved at that point a year ago?
Well, I don't know. So when I was an officer, I always tried to get voluntary compliance, right? I would try to talk common sense to you, say, hey, listen, why don't you let us take those firearms? Let's not gamble with this. Let's just put them into safekeeping, and then we're going to make sure that everybody's okay.
Did that work?
Parents it worked 100% of the time, Roop. It worked, just how you talk to people, right? So regardless of your Second Amendment rights or your rights against search and seizure and requirements for search warrants, I think there's still an avenue available just to have common sense discussions with parents and say, hey, listen, we've seen horrible things happen. Let's not let you be the next one.
Bill Cusick, I want to thank you for your time today on this important topic, this important day. And that is the Pulse on this Thursday night. Our hearts go out to everybody impacted by this tragedy in Georgia, as well as gun violence that we've seen in general here at home as well.